I just don't see any significant cuts coming. If you don't touch Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, the military, interest on the debt, it's an illusion, Kerry.
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever. The Financial Survival Network.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Hey, we're in the first week of February. Things are happening so quickly here. Wanted to get Michael Pento on, pentoport.com. Any questions for Michael and myself, kl@kerrylutz.com is the email address. Michael, did you ever think we were going to live through times like today, like we're living through?
You know, geez, how do I answer that? Yes, I'm surprised on some degree, but I don't think we've seen anything yet, Kerry, compared to what's coming. The fact that the bubbles in extent haven't burst yet doesn't mean they don't exist. Massive and record bubbles in the credit markets, housing, and in equities, and I mean they're just floating around waiting for a pin. And I kind of liken it to a hot air balloon. The hot air balloon tends to float when you keep on putting hot air into it, which is the liquidity coming into the bond market primarily. But it's taken a long time. It's taken years for that liquidity to be exhausted. You look at what's in the reverse repo facility and in the TGA, the level of real Fed funds rates. So all these are pointing to the fact that liquidity, the hot air that's needed, when you have a hot air balloon, it needs hot air to stay afloat. You cut off that hot air and it will crash if it's cut off long enough. And that's exactly what I see happening. I don't know if it's going to happen, this week or next month. I don't think so. But as we go through the year and that TGA starts to get drained, the reverse repo facility is already dry. We've had real Fed funds rate, a positive real Fed funds rate for many, many, many months now. We're still heading towards that crash. And and a comment, on what you just said, Kerry, I don't think I haven't heard anybody, and I love Donald Trump. I voted for him twice. I think he's got so many great ideas, but he's not a Superman. He's not infallible. He's not omniscient or omnipotent. And there's just so much he can get done. And we can talk about this tax cuts. We have to get into that, but people who are just sitting there and lulled to sleep by this endless stream of hot air and liquidity are going to be in for a rude awakening. And when it happens, it's going to be catastrophic for the markets who have just been inculcated into the Fed's got your back and the government has your back. And there's a Fed put in there. And there is none. There is none anymore. And the reason why there is no more put is because we are an insolvent nation with a big problem with inflation that has not gone away. And and all government can do is borrow and spend and print. That's all they can do. They don't have this, workforce or, manufacturing essence in the netherworld. It doesn't exist. They take your money and spend it, or they borrow it, or they print it. That's all they can do. And that's going to just add to the insolvency and inflation concerns.
And when they're borrowing it or creating it, printing it out of thin air, they're taking your money. You just don't know it because they're decreasing the purchasing power of that dollar. Now, Musk and DOGE, they've been attacking the blob, as they call it, in Washington and showing the receipts where the money's going. And without getting into all the specifics, it's absurd. But Musk says he can cut $4 billion a day off of government spending, which comes out to close to $1.5 trillion, Michael, which if we up our tariffs another $500 billion, the deficit, the stated deficit is gone. We still have the $200 trillion time bomb between Social Security, Medicare, all the so-called entitlements. But hey, a trillion here, a trillion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money, Michael.
Well, Musk is far smarter than I won't say you, because you can build a computer with your eyes closed. I mean, I just learned that today. But I just don't see any significant cuts coming if you don't touch Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the military, interest on the debt. It's an illusion, Kerry. There's nothing they can cut the heck out of the government. And I wish they would. It would be wonderful. We can cut spending. And the best thing we could do is maybe cut a lot of government waste. I agree. We're in one accord. But if you don't touch those entitlement programs, you're not going to make a significant dent in the debt or deficits. Certainly not the debt. The debt. That's a fallacy. We're not. Trump did say in his first Trump 1.0 said he was going to pay off the government debt. How did that turn out?
Yeah, well, he wasn't really running the government then. Now he's seized effective control, and I think they'll have to touch Social Security. Probably won't happen till after the midterms, but they really have no choice. Social Security is the biggie, and Medicare not far behind.
Mhm.
And
And then the
something
interest,
has
the
to be
interest on the
done.
debt is over $1 trillion. The question is, Trump is on record saying he's not touching Social Security and Medicare. He's on record saying that. Now that doesn't mean he won't he won't change his mind, but he's on record saying he won't touch it. But they have to be touched. We
Yeah.
just don't have the money. It's not there, and you just can't print it any longer because we already have an inflation problem that's not going away. And you saw it today in the non-farm payroll numbers. You see wages were up 4.1%, and they predicted to be up 3.8%. Consumer expectations of inflation are still way too high. And the Fed is dithering now, and they're saying, we're no longer hiking interest rates, we're cutting rates. Remember, we cut 100 basis points
Hmm.
from September 18th to the end of the year. And now we're still saying, the Federal Reserve is saying this, not me and not Kerry Lutz. We're going to still have several more cuts in 2025. I don't know if the long end of the bond market, which is what Scott Bessent said he's most concerned about, right? The Fed doesn't control the long end of the bond market directly. That's a product of inflation and debt deficits. He says he wants long-term rates to fall. I don't see how you get there by just adding to the inflation problem.
Hey, so speaking of non-farm payrolls and inflation, those measures are done by BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, which I believe is part of the Commerce Department. Memory serves me correct.
Department of
DOGE,
Labor. Department of Labor.
Department of Labor.
And by the way, if you get rid of the L in the BLS, I think you have a pretty good definition of what we're looking at.
Right. So Musk, through DOGE, is trying to gain access, and they've had several lawsuits filed by employees and unions and whatever. But once DOGE gets in there, what do you think they're going to find about those two specific measures?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If they find out that the government has been lying to us, Gary, would our government ever lie to us about anything? I mean,
No,
no.
Michael, come on,
Forgive
really?
me for even think. Forgive me
They
for ever
admit,
thinking that. But if let's just say hypothetically that they were playing some games with the numbers, and I have no knowledge that they were. I'm just saying hypothetically, and Musk uncovers this conspiracy that these birth death models were just way overblown, trying to reelect Joe Biden. You know what? You don't trust government data any longer, and I think that's really going to put a dagger into the bond market, and you'll see long-term rates spike. Because if you can't trust what the government is saying about inflation, and you go, wait a second, I thought I was crazy. I go to the store and my inflation's, double digits, and they're telling me it's coming way down. And well, they don't take into account, taxes. They don't take insurance really into account. They
no,
don't really count the value of the house, the housing bubble, because they look at owner's equivalent or rent. I mean, what
yeah,
isn't it easier, Carrie? Wouldn't it just be easier for them just to count the increase in home prices? We have the Case-Shiller home price index. Why don't we just use that as a proxy for what home prices are doing instead of this hypothetical? What could I rent my house out here if I had to? Well, it's just ridiculous.
yeah, that's
It's
well,
nonsensical. But
yeah,
but they obfuscate and they lie, and the hedonics and the substitution. We all know inflation is much higher than it's stated. But if it was an intentional a lie, cover up from the massage data, then they have a real problem.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that's going to, based on what we've seen so far. Just today, as we're speaking, uh, they got into the HHS computer and instantly found $100 billion worth of fraud and waste in Medicare and Medicaid instantaneously. But until we have a health revolution in this country, which actually might be bad, because you'd cut back on Medicare and Medicaid, but then your Social Security would go through the roof because people would live longer, right? So, right?
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, we would be
It,
a lot healthier if we fixed our problem with what we eat in this country. We have a
uh,
terribly unhealthy population, and I think
poison.
RFK Jr. has a shot at getting this. Just listen, there's some things we can love about Europe, some things we can hate about Europe, but you can't hate their food.
And Canada too. Canada too. Canada
Yeah.
doesn't allow, the Fruit Loops example, there's 18 ingredients in it, and like all of them in the US were artificial. All of them in Canada were natural. All the colors, the flavors, all that. And breakfast cereal, big agribusiness. It's poison. They're just putting poison into our bloodstreams.
Yeah. Well, you know who the biggest contributor is to the FDA, right?
Um, I can imagine it's a big pharma of one, Pfizer, perhaps.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
where the money goes. I mean, why should, if we had a healthy population, if we stopped all of the negative things that we put in our mouths and our bodies, artificial colors, genetically modified food, and we were a healthier nation, what would that do to, first of all, you wouldn't be able to you watch TV and there would be no commercials
yeah,
because every commercial is some kind of pill you could take for this, that, or the other, which is a product of what we're eating.
yeah.
Now you can inject yourself with these GLP-1s and supposedly, hey, I'm losing weight. I'm also losing, body mass and muscle. Is that a problem? I don't know. Maybe I just better watch what I eat healthy and exercise.
Good idea. Good idea.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far off track, but there's a lot of waste and fraud and abuse, and it doesn't just stop at the shores of the United States. I can guarantee you that. And the
Oh,
gold
that.
market, hey, Gary, the gold market is sniffing that out.
Yes. So, what about the gold market? We're at near $3,000 gold. Closed last month, 27.99. Now it's getting close to 2,900. Even silver is starting to go up. Is that the canary in the gold mine here, Michael?
Well, unfortunately, I've only had about a 5% position in gold. I sold a lot of it not too long ago, towards the end of last year. So I still own it, which is more than most people. Like most people don't have any exposure to the precious metal. But there's something going on with the precious metal because it really shouldn't be rallying here. Because the gold has been rallying when the dollar goes up, when the
Hmm.
dollar goes down, when interest rates rise and interest rates fall. I mean, it just goes up. And I think what's happening here is that I think a lot of nations are now have stepped up their recycling of their trade surplus into gold. They no longer want to hold dollars. They're just done with holding dollars. They don't want to buy our bond market. And when you own our bond market, you have to own dollars. So they're just done. They don't want America's hegemony any longer. So I think that was in place before, and that has only intensified in the last few months.
All right. So that's part of it. Hey, what about the strategic Bitcoin reserve here, Michael?
Well, don't get me started. I mean, I listen. If you listen to me about Bitcoin, you were wrong about, you could have made a fortune in a lot of these coins. But here's my take, and I'll give you a quick take on cryptocurrencies. They are not digital gold. And the reason why they're not digital gold is because there's a finite amount of AU
Hmm.
in the Earth's crust. There are an unlimited number of blockchains and coins that could ride along that
But
ledger.
not Bitcoin. Not
Unlimited number, Carrie. I'm
not
sorry.
Bitcoin. No. Bitcoin's 21 million.
Bitcoin's 21 million, but and I would love someone to tell me why I am wrong. What is the major difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana and Dogecoin and Fartcoin and Trump coin and Melania coin. They're all coins that ride along a blockchain, a digital ledger.
Hmm.
And it's so, listen, if you told me there's another element that was discovered in the Earth's crust and this element was virtually indestructible, it lasted forever and it's in limited supply. It's not gold, but it's another element that serves the same purpose. And you can make beautiful jewelry out of it and it's wonderful. It's
It's like
beautiful.
silver or
It,
platinum.
if you discovered gold, another element like gold that serves the same utility and functionality as gold, and you could say to me that you can create this in unlimited numbers, these new elements, then I would say, well, even though it's not gold, it's still going to attenuate the value of gold because there's more elements that do the same thing. That's exactly the same function as Bitcoin. And I'll give you one more reason why I hate cryptocurrencies, even though I've been dead wrong about them. Cryptocurrencies, in the purest sense, are decentralized ledgers. Okay. Decentralized means that Wall Street doesn't have their dirty, grimy fingers all over them. And that's exactly what's happening. So the price of Bitcoin is where it is today, close to $100,000 a unit,
Yeah.
because Wall Street has their grimy hands all in there. If there wasn't anything called a Bitcoin ETF, what do you think the value of Bitcoin would be? It'd be a whole heck of a lower. And the thing that gives Bitcoin its value, and it does have some value, but it's limited in my mind, is because they are decentralized, immutable, and anonymous transactions. But once Wall Street gets their hands on it, it's not immutable, you're not anonymous, and it's not decentralized any longer. Because
You
they
know,
can say, oh, Kerry Lutz, you own Bitcoin in this ETF. Well, guess what? I am the government. I'm taking your money from you, and you don't have it anymore. But that's
yeah.
why I own Bitcoin in the first place. So it's just antithetical to the whole creation of cryptocurrencies. So I've given you a short treatise on cryptocurrencies because they are not digital gold. They are not limited in value. There's an unlimited number, unlimited supply. There's an unlimited number of supplies of blockchains that be created. They are not limited in nature and they are worth less.
Yeah. I would just point out that this is the greatest gold rush ever for Wall Street cryptos because there's no due diligence involved. There's no like production. You don't have to analyze the company. You just create ETFs, you create options, futures, then you go out and prop trade and you make a fortune. Um, my theory is Sam Bankman-Fried, he ran a leaky ship, but they had to get rid of him in order to take over crypto.
Yeah.
FPX, they had to eliminate him. And because he was a bad bookkeeper, he wasn't necessarily a thief. You can't point to this guy where he stole the money and put it in his account. He just didn't put stuff in the right buckets. Now, granted, you're a lawyer, you do that, they'll throw you in jail. But, and he's in jail now. But
Yeah.
I would advise everybody to look up the law firm that forced the whole bankruptcy and look up their deep state past. It's the point where that law firm has actually had books written about them that they bought up the first edition and stopped the printing. And Michael, let's not forget the creditors. Now you know bankruptcies. The creditors got paid 120 cents on the dollar after all the grift from the trustee and from that law firm, hundreds and hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars of grift. We don't even know. The consultants, it's a club. The bankruptcy court is a clubhouse. And just like George Carlin said, it's all a big club and you aren't in it.
Yeah. Well, 120
So,
cents on the dollar does sound a bit rich when you're in chapter 11. So,
yeah, well, they said, well, the stuff went up in value. No, this guy was a genius.
yeah.
It's like if you had Musk running the accounting system of Tesla, he'd wind up in jail. He can't do it. That's not his yard house. He could build the system for you to manage it, but he couldn't effectively run it day to day. It's not in the guy's wheelhouse. This is what Sam Bankman-Fried did. And
Mhm.
when nobody loses money, how are you a criminal?
Yeah. Well, before we run out of time, I want to talk about and love your opinion on this, Kerry. So let's talk about the Trump's tax cuts. What Wall Street has right now is they're facing the tariffs, and Trump
Hmm.
said that there's nothing can stop the 25% tariffs going on Canada and New Mexico. Nothing. He said that on Friday, and then Saturday is supposed to go in effect, and then, of course,
Magic. There's a
the
deal.
30, that he punted the ball for 30 days. But these tariffs, I think, are necessary because if you're going to now, let's just talk about the extension of the Trump's tax cuts. The extension of the Trump tax cuts are supposed to cost about $4.5 trillion
Hmm.
over the 10-year horizon, and that's what OMB scores. Office of
Hmm.
Management Budget. I don't think tax cuts really cost you anything because you're going to get a lot of growth, but maybe they do cost you a little bit, but it's not going to be 4.5 trillion. But
Hardly.
you have to raise some revenue because if you do this thing through reconciliation, that's I think this big grand bill is going to be done through
That's what's going to
reconciliation.
happen.
It can't add to the deficit. So he's going to need tariffs and he's going to need huge tariffs. But then I also heard that tariffs can't be used as part of the reconciliation process. I don't know where he's going to get $4.5 trillion of new income, new revenue, or in tax cuts. I don't know where he's going to get it from. But I don't think, and here's the thing, even if he does get this through, and I hope he does, Trump, you're just extending the existing law. You're not giving any new impetus of lower taxes to Wall Street and to corporations. It's going to be the same rate. So I think people are underestimating, or I should say, overestimating how wonderful this big package is going to be. Unless he's going to extend the tax cuts even to greater degrees, like no taxes on tips and no
Good.
taxes on Social Security
So,
and all that stuff. And then you're going to blow a massive hole in the budget. He just said, Trump and Bessent, the new Treasury Secretary, that they're worried about long-term interest rates. They want them to come down. You blow another big hole in this deficit, which is already $2 trillion plus $1 trillion in interest. I mean, you're going to have a huge problem in the long end of the bond market. And those are that's a lot of what I'm talking about this air going into this balloon.
mm.
Spiking long-term rates would cut off that supply of hot air very quickly.
So, few things on that. Right now, we have an effective. Do you know what our effective tariff rate is on imports?
Tariff rate?
Yeah.
Effective tariff rate? No.
We bring in 80 billion a year in tariffs, which is the equivalent of 2%. Now, some things have more, some things have less, like shoes are like could be 15%, and but most things the effective rate's 2%. So if 10%, that's going to be, what is that going to be? 10%, five times 400 billion, 20%, 800 billion. All right.
Ugh.
Um, so I think long term, you got to look at a national consumption tax, a sales tax.
Yes.
It's the
Yes.
only
That's what
way.
I'm for that. First of all, let me just add that if you put 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada, you're not going to collect 25%. That's
Yeah,
not how it works because the exporting country could cut their prices, they can reduce the value of their currency. The
they
there's
already
other
have.
sorry.
They already have.
Yeah, so
Canada.
there's
Canada has
you are not going to get the exact number at all, not even close to the tariff that you put on your imports.
Mhm.
Just laying that out there.
Yeah, no question. That is true. But a 10% tariff, nobody's going to blink about it. 400 billion. There's another thing, like there's a thing called de minimis importation, where they just mail stuff in first class from China and other countries, and they just say it's de minimis, so no tariff ever gets levied against it. It's a big scam, and Trump had stopped that for a couple of days. They were freaking out in China over this. Now he's kept it going, but they're going to eliminate that. There's a lot of things that should be collecting tariff that don't, and so tariffs part of it. National sales tax, get rid of the IRS. The money's got to come from someplace. We can't get it from tariffs alone because we do 4 trillion a year in imports. And what are you going to do? 100%? So we bring in 4 trillion in revenue. It can't be done.
Can't be
It
done.
just can't.
Never happened. No, I'm all for you. A consumption tax is, I've always espoused a consumption tax, and
Yeah.
it's very progressive. The more money you spend, the more money you pay in taxes, and that you exempt. I would exempt certain things like food and
Food,
clothing.
drugs. Yeah.
But if uh, you can make it so that it's extremely beneficial for the country. Consumption tax encourages savings, encourages investment, encourages productivity. So that's the healthiest thing we can do, and just get rid of the entire IRS. But welcome. Can we get back from Dreamland? This is
Yeah,
a
that's our perfect.
quixotic conversation because it's just never going to happen.
No, no, no. But that is the way to do it. But but a flat tax also would kind of amount to the same thing as a sales tax. Just it's on income instead of expenditures. And let's not forget, a sales tax would encourage savings because you know you're not getting taxed on your savings. You're not getting taxed on your investment income. It would lead to a boom in this country. And, the ability to get rid of our system, flat tax has got to be the way to do it. But again, it's politically not feasible because why should I be paying the same amount as a percentage of my income as Elon Musk? The difference is Elon Musk has the option of paying nothing. You don't.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
There's also a lot of accountants, I think, would have a problem with the
And
getting rid
lawyers.
of lawyers.
Yeah. So you're giving me reasons why I shouldn't like it. As a recovering attorney here, I think nothing could be greater than
Yeah.
screwing over a profession that hasn't hesitated to screw over the public. I asked Trump, who's the biggest lobby in Washington, the most powerful? You know what he said? Lawyers. Think about it.
Yeah. That's why I said it's a quixotic conversation. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, but if you can embarrass them enough, and I do think there's the potential for $1 trillion worth of savings in the budget. You know, getting
Now,
rid of this crap. We haven't
well,
even hit the Defense Department yet, Michael.
well, here's the one hope that we have. Trump does not have to run again, and he can't run again unless he changes the Constitution.
Yeah, which
So
not happening.
he's going to have a scorched earth policy behind. He will make as many changes as he has to get this country right. So, like I said, I'm supportive of him. I don't think he's Superman. I don't think he's infallible. He's made a lot of mistakes in his life, personally and in business, but he's our best shot that we have.
Hey, think what happens when they go into the voter databases in all these states with AI, just like they're doing with the budget. I mean, it's all going to happen. I think every state will be forced to implement a DOGE. Several of them have states now. I think the federal government will just say, "Look, if you're spending 500 million or a billion a year or more, and you're taking any federal, if you take one federal cent, then you got to put in a DOGE and have a procedure for appointing them, and we're off to the races because what we're seeing here, multiply it times 57, right? We have 57 states, according to Obama, I think he said one time. Um, and all these authorities, counties, cities, states, it's all a big grift here, Michael.
Yes. Um, well, we could have Canada as our 51st state, right?
Well,
And maybe Palestine will be 52. So
yeah, it could be. You'll be vacationing on the Gaza Strip,
put it this
water view.
this I think the president has been in power for just a few weeks.
Almost 3 weeks on Monday.
I mean, just a few weeks, and we're just getting started. This has not even been a month, Kerry. And if you're in that 60/40 buy and hold, dollar cost average portfolio, I think you're in a world of hurt. And that's just a fact.
I mean,
When the recession does hit, and we are going to have a recession, we have not abrogated the laws of economics and the business cycle. I can guarantee you that it's going to be brutal
yeah.
because we have those triumvirate of bubbles. And if you don't have an active money manager that can get you out of harm's way and get you into some protection, so that's usually short-term treasuries, you're going to have some cash. The dollar could increase in value, and you have to be able to adroitly short the market. If you do those four things, you are going to turn it, what I believe is going to be the biggest disaster we've seen since the Great Depression, into something that can really um, not only protect you but enhance your retirement lifestyle. And that's what me and my firm are dedicated to.
Couldn't agree with you more. And if you look at the Great Depression, more millionaires were created then than any other time in history. And yes, the business cycle hasn't been repealed, not even by Trump, not even by Elon Musk. And some things never change. All right. So pentoport.com is the place to find Michael. And if you got a question or comment, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. And you'll find a link to Michael's site, the show notes of this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. While you're there, we just ask that you sign up for your free newsletter like over 70,000 FSN community members have in the past. Michael, hey, great catching up with you. Amazing, interesting times. We'll talk to you soon.
I can't wait, Kerry. Thank you.